A grandmother sent me a message last week. She said, I don't even know what questions to ask my grandchild about AI. I feel like I've already lost ground. I want to speak directly to her today and to every parent who has felt exactly the same way. Here's what the world tells you when they feel that way. You're behind. Technology is too complicated. Leave it to the experts. Set some screen time limits and hope for the best. Here's what the righteousness code tells you. You are not behind. You are a righteous protector, and righteous protectors don't need a computer science degree. They need a plan. Today, I'm handing you one. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here for part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, go back and start there because part 1 is the diagnosis. We named a threat. We identified the 5 specific signs that AI has become a moral authority in your child's life. We built the discern test. Today is the prescription. This is the most practical video I've ever made for this channel. By the time this video ends, you will have 5 specific tools in your hands. A 10-question home inventory, a family digital covenant, a 4-part conversation guide with exact words to use, a weekly digital check-in you can run in 10 minutes at the dinner table, and a restorative framework for families where the damage is already started. That's what we're covering today. No fluff, no theory, just a biblical plan your family can start executing this weekend. 5 steps. Ready to go. The responsibility code. It's accountability in the face of chaos. And the first pillar under that code is deny. Now I want to stop here because that word makes people nervous. Deny doesn't mean destroy. Deny doesn't mean confiscate every device in the house and move your family into a log cabin. Deny means decide what comes through your door and what doesn't. Decide what gets access to your children and what doesn't. Decide with intention, not by default. Because here's what most Christian parents are doing right now. And I say that with love. They manage by reaction. Something bad happens on the phone, you react. Something concerning shows up, you react. Your child says something that sounds like it came from an AI system, you react. The righteous protector doesn't manage by reaction. The righteous protector manages by covenant. But before you can build a covenant, you need to know what you're working with. That's the home inventory. 10 questions. You're going to sit down quietly before any conversation happens and answer these yourself. 1. What device does each child in my home own or regularly use? 2. What AI-enabled apps are currently installed on those devices? Not what you think is installed, what is actually there. 3. Are parental controls active? And when are they ready? Were they last updated? 4. Do I know every account my child has created online? 5. Are devices being used in shared family spaces or behind closed doors? 6. What is the average daily screen time per child, per the device's own data, not your estimate? 7. Does my child have unsupervised access to AI chatbots? 8. Are their devices in their bedroom overnight? 9. Do I have the passwords to every account? 10. When was the last time I sat with my child and went through their phone together? Not as a search, but as a conversation. If you can answer all 10 confidently, you're further ahead than most. If you hit a question 4 and already felt the floor shift a little, good. That's clarity. That's the beginning of accountability. In Psalms 101:3, I will not set before my eyes anything that is worthless. David wasn't talking about a phone. He was absolutely talking about what we choose to let in. The home inventory is how you find out what's in. Step 2, and this is where most digital safety plans fall completely apart, including Christian ones. The world says, set rules, enforce consequences, lock it down. Here's the problem with rules. Rules are external. Rules require enforcement. Rules create adversaries. And in a household where a parent is the enforcer and the child is the subject, you will spend the next decade in an arms race, Every rule produces a workaround. Every restriction produces resentment. Every confiscation produces a secret. We are not building rules today. We are building a covenant. Do you understand the difference? Rules say, here's what you cannot do. A covenant says, here is who we are. Here is what we stand for. Here is what we have agreed to together to protect. Rules get broken. Covenants get honored. And the difference is not in the paper. The difference is in the process. This covenant is not something you hand to your children. It's something you build with them. Here are 5 commitments that form the foundation of the family digital covenant. Commitment 1. All devices, phones, tablets, laptops, move to a shared family space by 8 p.m. every night. Not because we don't trust you, because we don't trust 2 a.m. and the AI chatbot more than we trust sleep and each other. Commitment number 2. New apps and new AI platforms require a parent co-viewing for the first 30 days. Not spying, co-viewing. We explore them together so we understand what we're engaging with. Commitment number 3. We protect each other's privacy. No photos of family members shared online without permission. No family conversations repeated to AI systems. Commitment 4. When something online troubles us, confuses us, unsettles us, excites us in a way we don't understand, we bring it to each other before we bring it back to the screen. Commitment 5. We review this covenant together every month. We add to it. We adjust it. Because a living covenant for a living family is stronger than a printed rule on a wall. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and a peace for those who have been trained by it. That is Hebrews 12:11. Covenant is a discipline with a future, and the harvest it produces in your family years from now will be worth every uncomfortable conversation you're afraid to have today. Which brings me to step 3. The step I get the most requests for. The exact words to use when you sit down with your child. Before we get there, I want to acknowledge something. Because I've watched parents go through this process, the inventory, the covenant, the conversation, and I have seen the point where it falls apart. And it's not step 4 or step 5. It's right here. The moment before the conversation. When the parent sits down across from the child and everything they plan to say evaporates because the child looks at them with that look, or the defensive one, or worse, the hurt one, and the parent thinks, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe I should wait. Maybe I'm overreacting. I need to say this clearly. You are not overreacting. The compassion code says, love in the face of apathy. Love goes anyways. Love shows up even when it's awkward. Love sits across the table from the resistance and says, I am not going anywhere because you matter more to me than any comfort. That is a spirit you bring to step 3. All right, the conversation guide. This is the centerpiece of the entire video. 4 parts in order. Do not skip ahead. Part 1. Ask. Don't accuse. Your opening is not a statement. It is a question. Tell me about this app. What do you actually do on it? What do you like about it? That's it. Your opening. Not, I've been concerned about what you're doing on your phone. Not, we need to talk about your screen time. Not any sentence that begins with, I've noticed. Because the moment you lead with a concern, you're activating their defense system. And a defensive child is not a listening child. You lead with curiosity, genuine curiosity. Because here's what most parents don't realize. Your child wants to tell you. They are waiting for an adult who is actually interested, not surveilling, not correcting, generally interested. Be that adult. And Proverbs 18:13, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Listen first, always. Part 2, explore, don't judge. Once they're talking, stay curious. How does it make you feel when you use it? Do you ever feel like you need it? like something would be missing if it was gone? These are the questions that reveal dependency before it becomes crisis. Most children have never been asked these questions. Nobody has ever invited them to examine their own emotional relationship with their devices. You are doing something extraordinary when you do this. You are modeling the examined life. And a child who has been taught to examine their relationship with a screen will eventually examine their relationship with everything, including their faith. Part 3, discern together. Remember the 3 questions from part 1? This is where they get deployed in real time with your child. Out loud. Can we run this through the discern test together? Does this bring you closer to God or further away? Does it make you more like the person you want to be? Or would you be comfortable if I could see every conversation you've had with it? Notice something important. You're not running the test on your child. You're running it with them. Because the goal is not to catch them. The goal is to give them a tool they will use alone at 2 a.m. when you're not in the room, because they practice it with you. Part 4, decide together. This is the part that most parents skip, and it's the most important one. After you've asked, after you've explored, after you've discerned, you say this: what would a righteous warrior do here? What do you think we should do about this as a family? Give them the answer, not as in tell them what you've already decided. Give them the opportunity to arrive at the right answer themselves. Because a child who decides is a child who owns the decision. And a child who owns the decision is a child who keeps it. I want to say one more thing about this conversation before we move on. The goal of this conversation is not to be right. I need you to hear that. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is not to prove that AI is dangerous. The goal is not to get your child to agree with you. The goal is to stay connected, because a child who trusts you will come to you when something goes wrong. That trust, built in 100 small conversations like this one, is worth more than every parental control software ever written. That is the compassion code. Love in the face of apathy. And it's the most powerful tool in this entire audit. Quick pause here. If you're watching this and you've already been through part 1 of the series, and you recognize the signs we talked about there, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What did you recognize? What question are you most nervous to ask your child? I read every comment, every one. Now, steps 4 and 5. These are the ones that make the whole system sustainable. Here's the most common failure mode I see in Christian families who try to implement a digital safety plan. They do it once. They have the conversation. They write the covenant. They do the inventory. They feel good about it for about 2 weeks. And then life happens and the covenant ends. And the covenant ends up on the refrigerator, and the check-ins get skipped, and gradually, quietly, the old patterns return, because discipline without consistency is just an event. The faithful pillar says consistent in faithfulness in practice, not heroic moments, faithful moments. Every week, even when nothing seems wrong, especially when nothing seems wrong. Here's the weekly digital check-in. 10 minutes, the dinner table, every Sunday or day of the week you choose. Question 1. What did you see or read online this week that you're still thinking about? This one surfaces the things they didn't know they needed to process. The image they can't shake, the argument they saw in a comment section, the AI response that confused them. You're not interrogating. You're creating a space where those things have somewhere to go. Question 2. Did anything make you feel uncomfortable or confused this week? Even a little? The even a little matters, because your child has probably already decided that something small doesn't warrant bringing up, that it's not a big deal, that you'll just overreact. Even a little gives them permission to mention the small thing before it becomes a big thing. Question 3. Is there anything you wish I had helped you with this week, but you didn't ask? The question is the long game. Most children won't answer it honestly the first time, or the second, or maybe not even the 10th. But the act of asking it, week after week, sends a message. I am not a monitor. I am not an enforcer. I am a resource, and I will keep showing up until you believe me. In Matthew 25, verse 23, well done, good and faithful servant. Not well done, brilliant servant. Not well done, perfectly successful servant. Faithful, showing up consistently, even when the results aren't visible yet. That is the work. I need to talk to a specific group of parents right now. The ones who watch part 1 and recognize not one sign, but 3 or 4 or all 5. The ones for whom it isn't preventive medicine, it's more like emergency care. If that's you, I want to say something before I give you any steps. You have not failed. I need you to hear that the way I mean it. You are a parent living in the most complex digital environment in human history, with no instruction manual, often very little support, and a genuine desire to raise your children in the way they should go. And something got through. That's not a verdict on your parenting. That is the reality of a spiritual warfare in the digital age. And the Restore pillar says, healing what's already broken. Here's the model. First, grace before correction. Always. Your opening is not a confrontation. Your opening is this. I am not angry with you. I am not here to punish you. I am for you. And I need you to know that before we talk about anything else. Mean it when you say it. Because if there's a trace of performance in your voice, they will hear it every time. Grace first, not as a strategy, as a posture. Second, understand what need the AI was meeting. This is your question that unlocks everything. Why was your child there? What were they looking for that they didn't feel they could get somewhere else or from you? Loneliness, validation, a voice that didn't judge them, an answer to a question they were afraid to ask a human. The AI didn't create those needs. It exploited them. Your job, the deeper job, is to become the place those needs get met. That is not a small assignment. I know that, but it is the right one. Third, rebuild the relationship before you rebuild the rules. This is the order that matters. Relationship first, rules second. Not because rules don't matter, they do, but a child who trusts you will follow your rules. A child who fears you will circumvent them every time. Joel 2, verse 25. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. That is not a verse for good times. That is a verse for the parent sitting in the wreckage, wondering if it's too late. It's not too late. God's specialty from Genesis to Revelations is restoration. He invented it. And He is more invested in your child's formation than you are. Lean on that today. 5 steps. Let me put them back in your hands. Step 1, the home inventory. 10 questions. Know what you're working with. Step 2, the family digital covenant. Not rules, a covenant built together, honored together. Step 3, the conversation guide. Ask, explore, discern together, decide together, in that order every time. Step 4, the weekly check-in, 10 minutes, every Sunday, faithful when nothing is wrong, especially then. Step 5, restore, grace first, find the need, rebuild the relationship before you rebuild the rules. Here is your one action step for this week. Choose one step, just one, the one that feels most urgent for your family right now. Not all 5, 1. Do it before next Sunday. Not because the others don't matter, but because a family that actually does one thing is further ahead than a family that plans to do 5 things and gets nothing done. Part 3 of this series is already live, and it's the one that changed how I see this entire conversation. We're going behind the curtain into the infrastructure, into the deception, into what the Bible has to say about the systems that power your AI your children are talking to every day. The link is in the description below. Watch it next. And before you go, comment one word, the one word that describes what you're feeling right now as a parent in this digital movement. One word, I want to know. Because this community is not a comment section. It's an army of righteous protectors who refuse to hand their children over to a machine, who show up with the conversation guide even when it's awkward, who sit at the dinner table every Sunday evening when nothing seems wrong, who restore with grace, with patience, with God's word as an anchor, even when the locust years feel too long. That is who you are. 5 codes, 4 pillars, 1 mission. And we are not finished. Let's go.